Good morning. J.A. Del Rio appreciates your participation and welcomes you to the webinar, Doing Business in Costa Rica. It is my pleasure to introduce Josue Gutierrez, tax partner of our Costa Rica office. He holds a degree in business administration from the University of Costa Rica, a second degree in public accounting from Fidelitas University, and a master's degree in tax consultancy for companies from the Latin America University of Science and Technology. He has given seminars on tax issues such as income tax, value-added tax, and tax closing seminars. Josue has more than 13 years of experience, and for 9 years, he worked in a Big Four, where he stood out for his management with clients for different industries and sizes in the areas of tax, accounting consulting, and special regimes for local and multinational companies, as well as active participation in tax solutions and the attraction of foreign investment for Costa Rica. Welcome, Josue.
Hi, good morning.
Excellent. Well, then let's get started so we can discover the investment opportunities that Costa Rica has to offer. I'll leave it to you, Josue.
Thank you, Alejandra. And thank you all for participating in this webinar. For me, it's a pleasure to talk about doing business in Costa Rica. Just to mention some type of agenda, we will be talking initially about some general aspects of Costa Rica, then about the tax obligations that apply to most companies here in Costa Rica. And finally, we will explain to you the free trade zone regime, which is the main reason about why there are so many companies that decide to come to invest in Costa Rica. So let's start with the general data of Costa Rica, some very several interesting information about this beautiful country. Costa Rica, probably you know Costa Rica, you have heard the name for nature, right? Costa Rica is known worldwide for its nature, for beaches, mountains, tropical forests, and therefore is one of the most touristic countries in the world. However, it's also an excellent destination for conducting businesses. Costa Rica makes up 5% of the Earth's biodiversity, which is very interesting. This means that nearly 5% of the species found worldwide are here in Costa Rica. And this is interesting because we're a small country, but we have a lot of biodiversity. We have a privileged location since we are in the middle of the continent of America, and we have coasts with both oceans, the Atlantic and the Pacific. So this facilitates or makes easier the logistic in transport of goods or in exports or imports, and this allows us to have direct communication with a lot of countries. Also, our main ally is the United States. Most of the companies that are located in Costa Rica, I'm talking about multinational companies, of course, the headquarters is in United States. However, in recent years, there has been many other countries that have decided to invest here in Costa Rica. So we have companies whose headquarters are located in Europe. We have many companies from UK, for instance, from Mexico, of course, from Brazil, etc. And Costa Rica is recognized for being a country of peace, and that has a great stability, political stability. Actually, Costa Rica is number 17 worldwide in the ranking of democracy, ranking that is led by the Nordic countries in Europe. Something very interesting and that we're proud of this is that Costa Rica is a country without an army. We don't have army. It was abolished in 1986. And the decision was made to take all the resources that we were spending in the army to give it a different a different use. So we started investing in education. And that's why in Costa Rica invests 14% of the total expenses of the government in education. And as a result of this, the education in Costa Rica is free. It's mandatory as well. And we expanding education almost the double or twice the investment that other countries that belong to the OECD, for instance, expanding in education. So actually, we say that in Costa Rica, and the statistics says that uh, the main reason to attract companies in Costa Rica, besides all of this, is actually the high quality of our human capital. Okay, now just to continue to talk a little bit about infrastructure. We have in Costa Rica 2 ports, one on the Pacific and the other is in the Atlantic. We have also 2 airports. The main one is located in the most developed area, which is San Jose. So it means that if you decided to invest in Costa Rica and you need to come here, you can leave the airport and in less than 30 minutes or 1 hour, you can be in your office. Everything is very close and the airport has a perfect location. And one more fact about environment, also we're proud of this, is that Costa Rica generates 99.99% of all energy that we consume from renewable energy. And the goal is reaching 100% in the coming years, just to be the first country in the world to do so. So this is very important in business because you know that when we talk about supply chain, it's very important to say it or to make sure that the company is making transactions with some country that is environmentally friendly, and that's the case of Costa Rica. Here you can see how is the distribution of our economy in exports. Basically, we have like 50% goods and 50% services. Related to goods, several years ago, it was more related to agricultural products, but this has changed in recent years. Now we're most focused in export medical devices. That's why there are many manufacturing companies that are here in Costa Rica. And also we have increased everything related to services. The reason of this is because Costa Rica has made a huge effort to bring some type of services that are interesting for the country, like technical services, like church service, for instance. So that has allowed us to increase our export services in a very significant way. Finally, just to finish talking about general data of Costa Rica, we are the #1 country in Latin America in terms of human capital. This means that in terms of workforce, skills, and education, Costa Rica leads the region and is at levels very similar to highly developed countries. So for instance, here in this image, you can see that we are very similar to United States, Spain, and all the rest of countries of Latin America that we're the #1. We included here India because it's interesting since the idea of Costa Rica is to develop businesses related to church services or tech companies. In India, it's very known as well that they have a lot of church services there. Of course, because of the labor, of the cost of the labor there, it's cheaper. However, we compare the skills, the talent using this image, we can see that there is a huge difference between Costa Rica and India. So that's why many companies, specifically companies that whose headquarters is in the United States, they have preferred to develop church services in Costa Rica instead of India. So that's very good. Okay, now I already talked about very positive things of Costa Rica. We're going to talk now about something that is not so attractive. Nobody likes taxes, but is important all businesses. So this in this with this data, what we want to let you know, it's like the general taxes that applies in Costa Rica. And then in the last part of the webinar, we will talk about the free trade zone. And I'm mentioning this because the free trade zone companies are exempt of most of these taxes. However, it's important to understand the general way how it works in Costa Rica for companies that wants to operate for the traditional regime, not for the free trade zone, but for the traditional one. So first mention that in Costa Rica, people who work for a company should not prepare a personal income tax like it happens in United States, for instance, that everybody must submit their own income tax. In Costa Rica, it's not like that. Since it is the employer who every month must withhold some part of the salary to transfer it to the tax authority. So the payment of taxes for physical people are automatically. But we have the corporate income tax, and the maximum rate is 30%. So most companies are subject to this 30% rate since this applies when the profit generated is greater than $200,000 a year approximately, right? So when we are talking about tax profit, of course, we're talking about the gross income minus the deductible expenses. So this will be the tax profit, and based on this amount is that the rate is determined. So there are different rates, for instance, for smallest companies or for those companies that just started operations and they haven't operated like in a regular normal year. So if they have a tax income lower than $10,000, the tax rate for the corporate income tax would be just 5%. It's very low. If the company has a tax profit lower than $16,000, it would be 10%. Lower than $20,000, it would be 15%. And lower than $200,000, it would be 20%. If the income is higher than $200,000, it would be the standard rate, 30%. Most of multinational companies, of course, are within this last section, the 30%, since the income normally is higher than 200,000 a year. So besides the corporate income tax, we have also the value added tax in Costa Rica. So the rate is 13%. And this applies, of course, in all purchases of goods and services. So if the company wants to hire professional services or for the rent of the office or to buy assets, etc., the 13% will be added. So this is important to consider. There are social charges. And this is the amount that the employer must contribute to the Social Security, and the rate is 26.5%. Basically, this allows to finance the health system of Costa Rica, that is very strong, by the way. And this also allows to all employees to have free access regardless of the complexity of the treatment in case of illness. So this means that if I need to receive medical attention, just because we have this strong health system, I can receive all the medical attention needed without paid anything else besides the social contribution that the employer and the employee must pay in a monthly way. Also, we have some agreements to avoid the double taxation, basically with Mexico, Germany, and Spain, but we have a lot of different agreements with other countries for having some kind of business and exemptions in import duties, for instance, with the United States. So we can definitely take advantage of that.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Josue. It was a really interesting topic. So now let's talk a little bit about In the following slides, I'm going to share with you the timeline with the step items in order to start operations in Costa Rica. So they are divided into 3 steps. The first step would be the legal incorporation. And the second step is the part where we would come in as your CPA firm and help you with the initial registrations before the different authorities in Costa Rica. The third step is this would be your day-to-day compliance for an operating company. So let's go ahead and move on to the first timeline. This first timeline is the legal incorporation, which is done by the lawyers. And it's important to mention that if you need references for a legal firm, we would be happy to share some options. Alrighty, so the first point would be to define the type of company to register. There are different types of companies in Costa Rica, the most common being an SA, anonymous companies, and an SRL, limited liability companies. In both companies, the owners can be foreigners or some other moral society. The second step is once the company is defined, the legal representatives are assigned in the case of an SRL, and the board of directors are formed in the case of an SA. These people are the only ones able to register the company before the different authorities in Costa Rica. In JA del Rio, we can provide the service for legal tax representation. The third point is in order to finalize the creation of the legal entity, we would need to complete the national registration, which can take approximately from 1 to 2 weeks max. And for the last point, we highly recommend for you to register all of your commercial trademark. So let me explain a brief resume. So once we have the official document named legal status, this is the document that confirms the company has been created. So at this point, we can now move on to the next timeline. In this next timeline, this is where the initial registrations will start. The first one being the AT, the tax administration. This registration is done online and with your legal tax representative. It can also be done by a foreigner, but we highly recommend that this person be a Costa Rica citizen due to the complex tax platform, or you can grant a POA to someone in J del Rio. In the same point, we would need to determine the regime in which you will operate in Costa Rica. As Josue mentioned, there are 2 different types of regimes. The traditional one that he has just spoken about, and the free trade zone, which in a couple of minutes he will talk about and detail all the tax incentives for the trade zone regime. Let's go ahead and move on. So another quick resume. Once the company is registered before the tax authorities and you have defined the regime, at this point, the tax obligations are activated and the company will need to comply on a monthly basis. So this would be where you can start invoicing, receiving invoices, and this would be like the normal day-to-day compliance. The next point would be opening up your banking accounts. This obligation is also done by the legal tax representative. And the banks start to require certain information to start the process. A typical document that they ask for is a projected cash flow, which we can also help you with. And then let's move on to the next steps. Number 3 and 4. These are labor registrations. So if the company is ready to hire employees, then this is where we would need to register. But if the company is not ready to hire any employees, then it would not be necessary to register. The first one being with the CCSS, the Social Security. In Costa Rica, the healthcare is public and everyone has a right. So this becomes an obligation for companies and for the employees. The next labor registration would be with the INS, the National Insurance Institute. All employees must be registered since this government institution is who pays for all disabilities and work accidents. So this is a very important registration. And the last point being is obtaining your municipal license. Depending on where you are located, the municipalities are the ones who grant the permit so you can carry out your activities in the physical space. Okay, so I think hopefully everyone grasps all these steps. This is so you can start operating in Costa Rica, but please feel free to send any questions you may have, and in our Q&A session, we would be happy to answer them. So now let's go ahead and move on to the most interesting part with the free trade zone regime. Go ahead, Josue.
Thank you, Alejandra. And before that, just to answer a couple of questions, somebody is asking if we have double taxation agreement with Colombia. The answer is no, we don't. But this is interesting. The part that we are going to talk now, the free trade zone, there are incentives that makes companies to be exempt of remittances, for instance, and because this is part or some of the benefits to have a double taxation agreement. We don't have with Colombia, but under this regime, there are some benefits that could be very useful for you. And the other is that if it's allowed to have US dollars currencies bank accounts in Costa Rica, yeah, of course, we have the local currency in Costa Rica is colones, but most of companies or most of transactions are actually in US dollars. So it's the most common. We can have also accounts in euros as well if it's necessary. So there is no problem with the type of currency. So let's talk about the free trade zone. So what is this? What is this that we have mentioned several times already? Basically, this is a special regime where there are companies that it could be you interested to be part of this special regime, and basically the companies must get a couple of commitments. There are two important things. One is to invest in fixed assets. This is what we name investment level. And secondly is to hire people. That's what we name employment level. So if the companies get a commitment to invest in people and in fixed assets, the government, as in exchange, will grant you some tax incentive that we will review in a few minutes. So at the end, it's like some kind of contract that the company has directly with the government of Costa Rica. In fact, the president of Costa Rica must sign this contract, and the name is an executive decree. So this is like your support to indicate that you are a free trade zone, and that's why you have all this tax incentive. So the objective of this special regime is the generation of employment and promote business with other local companies. For instance, because you will have to purchase assets, or you will have to rent an office in Costa Rica, or to hire professional services. So at the end, it is a way to keep the economy active, and that's why the government is willing to stop collecting taxes from you. That's why you have this incentive. This is a very solid regime that was even reviewed by the OECD a few years ago. This because Costa Rica entered to this organization and everything was approved for them. So there are a lot of controls, and that's why the companies that belongs to this free trade zone regime or to this special regime will assume also some controls, some obligations that you will have to implement, and this is to protect the regime. Now, what type of companies can be part of this free trade zone regime? There are several categories already established in the law. and there are some limitations specifically for trading companies. So let's just start with this one. Trading companies, we refer to this when we're talking about companies that buy products in order to sell the same product without making any transformation to the product. Basically, you can change labels or sizes or some minor changes, but at the end it's the same product. So it just purchase product to exports. This is the only category that has a total restriction on local sales. So it's not, so it's basically created for exports. So that's why in Costa Rica, it's common for some companies, or they decided to establish logistic distribution centers here in Costa Rica. So they import products or they purchase products locally to export to Central America or to Latin America or to United States. So it's basically, this is to take advantage about the geographical position that we have and the access to both oceans. So that's one of the reasons for this special category. Now we have another one that is services, and this is actually the most common. Most of companies that are part of the free trade zone are companies that provide services. So we're talking here about shared service centers, call centers, technology companies, where they can develop software or they can provide technical support, everything related to technology. Companies that provide finance services, human resources, marketing to related companies also is very common here in Costa Rica. Now, we also have the administrators companies or the free trade zone management. Basically, these are the companies that are responsible for managing or to administrate a physical area, a physical space. So there is a building and they can lease a floor or an office to other companies that will be part of the free trade zone. So it means that if you are a company that provides services and you want to be part of the free trade zone, probably you will have to rent an office within a free trade zone part. So the free trade zone administrators are the owners or the administrators of the free trade zone areas already developed. And the attractive of this is that, and I'm going to mention some benefits right now, is that they are exempt of the corporate income tax 100%. So free trade zone parks management, they lease, they receive some income because of the rent of the offices, and the total income is totally exempt of income tax. And we have the manufacturing companies, that this is, I would say, the second most important category within the free trade zone regime. In manufacturing, basically, this corresponds to companies that manufacture products. That is, they buy raw material to produce something, and companies can sell the product locally, or you can export the product. You have both options. And this is where there are many companies of medical and technological supplies. There are even free trade zone parts that are exclusively for medical sector. So this is a very significant part of our economy. And there are others types of industries. Actually, this is very, very new. It was included like 3 months ago. Now it's possible the health services companies, let's say hospitals and adventure parks companies. Let's imagine some kind of Disneyland in Costa Rica. So these parks could be also be part of the free trade zone and receive all the incentives. So now let's talk about the incentive, and this is the most attractive. So I'm going to explain each one. Basically, the first one is that companies do not pay import duties on assets, on both assets and raw materials. So if you are going to start operations in Costa Rica, you will have to probably to purchase assets. Let's say furniture, equipment. You can purchase everything locally, or you can import. It's up to you. So if you want to import something, the difference for being a free trade zone, or the incentive, is that you don't pay duties at all. You don't pay the additional taxes like VAT. Also in imports, you will be totally exempt. So for manufacturing companies, the raw material is also totally exempt. So the cost to produce something, it's lower compared to the regular regime, right? Because in the regular regime, you will have to pay duties and taxes. Companies are also exempt from value added tax on all purchases of goods and services. So again, in Costa Rica, I mentioned that we have the VAT of 13%. So if you are going to pay for everything in Costa Rica, for some service that you receive, for something that you need, some goods that you need to purchase, the free trade zone are exempt of this. So you don't pay this 13%. So this is very helpful for the cash flow. Everything would be cheaper for you. The exemption from withholding tax on remittances, this is the one that I was linked in some way with the double taxation, right? And this is very interesting because this is a benefit that actually it helps not to the company in Costa Rica, it helps to the other company located abroad. Let's imagine that Colombia, because the person that asked, she was asking for Colombia. If there is a company in Costa Rica and the headquarters is in Colombia, and Colombia provides some kind of services to the entity in Costa Rica, normally when Costa Rica is going to make the payment to Colombia, there is depends on the service, of course, but normally there would be a withholding to apply of 25%. As if the company in Costa Rica is a free trade zone, the company is exempt to make these withholding taxes. So it means that the company could make the payment of 100 of the total amount, 100%. So who is the company that, or what is the company? The company that is receiving actually the benefit is the entity in Colombia, because they are receiving the full amount of payment, right? But the idea of this is that the free trade zone was at the beginning created thinking that there will be a lot of transaction with related companies. So that's why this is a benefit that is seen as a group, and that's why it's attractive for the headquarters, since they can receive all the payments. And this applies also for dividends. The free trade zone are also exempt of withholding taxes on dividends. The 15% that I mentioned before, well, here it doesn't apply. It means that if the company has in Costa Rica has retained earnings and they made the decision to distribute dividends, they send the money and the headquarters will receive 100%. No withholdings will be applied. So that's very good. There are also a municipal tax exemption. The municipal taxes, like the local government, depending on the location of the company. So based on the location, there are an annual tax that must be paid to the municipality, and also some permissions to develop the business in that area. But the free trade zone companies are exempt during 10 years for this municipal tax, so you don't have to pay anything. And the most attractive incentive is the corporate income tax, that basically is this slide that we are seeing here. There are a lot of numbers. It could be overwhelming, but let me clarify. The first concept that is important to understand is what we have here, GAM in Spanish. In English is Greater Metropolitan Area. Basically, in Costa Rica, like in the middle of Costa Rica, there is the GAM. It's like a circle where the most important cities are located, where most of the companies are. So that's what we name GAM in Spanish, or Greater Metropolitan Area. And everything outside of this circle is considered outside of GAM. The difference is that the government of Costa Rica wants to promote that new companies be established outside of the greater metropolitan area, these companies will have additional, or no additional service. They will have additional years of incentive. Um, so let's clarify with the numbers. For instance, the first row here, it says that this applies to traders company, to companies that belongs to the category of services, to administrator companies, right? So the incentive for being a free trade zone company and that is located within the greater metropolitan area is to be totally exempt of income tax, of corporate income tax during the first 8 years. So it means that it doesn't make difference if the company generates $1 million, 10 million, $100 million, everything would be totally exempt. There is not taxes to pay during 8 years. Then from year 9 to 12, the benefit will be 15, or the rate that apply would be 15% instead of 30, which is the standard rate, right? So you will pay like 50% of the standard rate. That's why 15 in this case. And then from year 13 on, you will pay the normal rate, which is 30%. Okay, so here you can see that there is actually 12 years of benefits, 8 year full exempt, and 4 years paying half of the normal rate. If you are going to be located outside of the greater metropolitan area, it's very similar, but the years are different. You won't be exempt 8 years of income tax, you will be exempt 12 years. And then from year 13 to 18, you will be subject to the half of the standard rate, so it would be 15. And then from year 19 on, you get the normal rate, 30%. This doesn't apply for manufacturing because manufacturing, they have a different treatment. For manufacturing companies, there are two categories. You can be a mega project, which is the last row here. A mega project basically is those manufacturing companies that are able to invest at least $10 million and to hire 100 people. So if you are able to get these both commitments, you will have basically the same years of benefit that I just mentioned. The first 8 years totally exempt, then 4 years paying 15, and then the regular rate. But if you are not a company that will invest a huge amount like this, and you can invest a lower amount, and we will see the requirements in a while, you can still be a free trade zone company, but there is a difference. You will be located within the great metropolitan area. The tax rate that will apply during the first 8 years would be 6%. So instead of 30%, you will be paying 6%. It's still very good. And then from year 9 to 12, 15%. And then from year 13 on, the 30%. If you are going to be located outside developing a manufacturing activity, in that case, you will be totally exempt during 6 years. Then from year 7 to 12, 5%. And then from year 13 to 18, 15%, and then from year 19 on 30%. So as you can see, here the most important is that you can, with this table or with the chart, sorry, you can review what activity, or what activity is possible to develop in Costa Rica, and then to see what the corporate income tax rate is, the one that would apply to you. Normally, companies are totally exempt. And the most attractive of this as well is the possibility to renew the benefits by doing a process named 20Bs or 20Bs process. This basically means that the companies at any time and limited times, they can request to renew the benefits. So in order to renew the benefits, basically the companies must get a new commitment. So if, for instance, if I hire, or if my initial commitment was to invest or to hire 20 people, right? And then I started operations in Costa Rica, and right now I have 50 people, 50 employees, and I want to increase my activities in Costa Rica because I can bring some new operations, or the business has been going very good, and I just need to increase in my head count so I can get a commitment to hire more people, not to keep the 50 that I have right now, but I can get a commitment to hire 20 additional people, and then the government will renew all the benefits. So it means that I will start from zero again to be totally exempt 8 years of income tax. And that's why there are many multinational companies in Costa Rica that they have been more than 20 years. They have been a free trade zone company for more than 20 years, and they have never paid taxes because they constantly renew the benefits. And that's very good. Again, this is not something bad. This is very positive because the idea of the objective, of, as I mentioned, of the free trade zone is not related to taxes, is related to develop or to keep active the, the business in Costa Rica, and to develop, of course, to hire employees. Now, a free trade zone park. What is a free trade zone park? Basically, a free trade zone park, uh, those are areas that are already authorized by an administrator company that allows to other free trade zone companies to be located there. So that's why I mentioned that normally if I want to start operations in Costa Rica, I will rent some office within a free trade zone park. So it's like this building that you can see here, like there are many offices there, and those offices are already authorized as free trade zone area, and there is an administrator of all of this. So basically, I just rent the space, and this is important just for the requirements, to clarify the requirements. Basically, we have mentioned that the companies can be located within the greater metropolitan area or outside, right? And now it's important as well to clarify that companies can be located within a free trade zone park or outside a free trade zone park. And this is important because based on this is the minimum commitment of investment that you will have in order to be part of the free trade zone. So for instance, if you want to be, if you're a company that provides services or a manufacturing company, and you want to be part of the free trade zone in Costa Rica, so you need to define where you are going to be located. Again, the most common is within the greater metropolitan area, since here is where most people are located, where universities are located, etc., and within a free trade zone park. So the minimum investment is just $150,000. If you are going to be located outside of a free trade zone park, then the minimum investment is $2 million. There is a huge difference here. And the reason is, or the companies that would go outside of a free trade zone park are those companies that will purchase some land or that will purchase a building or already constructed. But if you don't want to purchase anything and you just want to rent offices, definitely the option is within a free trade zone park and just invest $150,000. Now, when we are talking about investment, we're talking about fixed asset. This is furniture, equipment. This also includes the leasehold improvements. When you rent the office and if you need to make some improvement, you need to pay for the branding, right? All of that count as part of the investment level. In Costa Rica, fixed asset is, or something is considered fixed asset when the cost is higher than $200. So if you purchase a monitor or a headset, that in most of the countries this would be an expense. In Costa Rica, if it costs more than $200, it would be a fixed asset. So that would count already as part of the investment level. So it shouldn't be so difficult to get to this number. If you are going to be located outside of the greater metropolitan area, then the minimum investment would be $100,000 if you will be located within a free trade zone park, or if you want to be outside of a free trade zone park and outside of the greater metropolitan area, it would be 250,000 US dollar. Here, this is very important, and this is a common question. Question is, when do I have to get to this amount, or what is the deadline? The law says that you have 3 years time to get this amount. So it doesn't. So it means that it's not necessary that if you're going to start operations, let's say this month, May 2023, that since the beginning you will have to invest this. No, it's not like that. You will have 3 years. It means until 2026 is when you are going to be reviewed, and in your accounting you will have you will have, or you should have at least this amount. If you have more than this, that is perfect, but this would be the minimum. And the second requirement, we already clarified the investment level. Now the employment level. Basically, there is not a minimum quantity of people or a minimum head count that you are supposed to hire, but the law what mentioned is a formula, and this applies for services category. This basically there is a formula. It's a very complex formula, but I already run the formula, and the result is the following. If you are going to invest 150,000, which is the minimum according to the previous slide, for investment in assets, then in order to get the correct result in the formula, you will have to have remunerations or a total compensation of 320,000 US dollars. In total compensation, we means of the full salaries, the 13th salary that is mandatory in Costa Rica, and the social charges as well. So basically, if you have like an average salary of $2,000 a month with 10, 12 people, you will get to this amount annually. So it's mean that, or we can get as conclusion that, of course, it depends of the average of the salary, but in general, that for an investment of 150,000 in fixed asset, you will have to hire at least 12, 10, 11, or 12 people to be able to be a free trade zone. So it's not so many people. Normally, there are companies that have much more than this. And also, you have 3 years for this commitment. So again, you don't have to hire the full commitment of employment since the beginning. You can start with just 1, 2, 3 people, and then of course when the company is growing, you will hire more people. But the most important that in 3 years, when the company will be reviewed by Procomer. Procomer is the company that regulates the free trade zone regime. You will have at that moment, or you will have the obligation at that moment to have at least 320 in remunerations. And just to finalize, we want to mention some companies that already are part of the free trade zone. In Costa Rica, there are more than 500 companies, so I just included probably some of them that are known worldwide. So related to service category, we have Akamai, we have Amazon, we have AstraZeneca. Akamai and Amazon are related to technological services. AstraZeneca is the one that, well, in Costa Rica, basically there is the church service for the Caribbean and Central America. We have Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola has here like 5 different companies. 4 of them are free trade zone. We have Bayer, DHL, Microsoft, Intel, Dell, IBM, HP. All these last one are related to technological services. And we have Roche, that this is also a shared service. For manufacturing category, we have Abbott, Edward Life Science, Intel, Coloplast, Glaxo, Bayer, also Coca-Cola. Most of these are related to medical devices production. And we have some marketing or trading companies like Roche, Allergan, Kimberly-Clark, and Boston Scientific. This is just to mention some companies, but the list is also is public in case you want to see the full list. You just type in Google free trade zone companies in Costa Rica, and you will see all the entities. So remember, any question, just let us know. So Alejandra, you want to continue?
Thank you, Josue. So I think that we can all say that Costa Rica has very nice tax incentives. So now, something that we can help you with for your final decision and coming and opening operations over here, how can JA Del Rio help you? Well, the first item would be with the feasibility study. This study is so we can help you define how to operate in Costa Rica and under what regime is the most convenient, even though we know, and to let you know exactly how to start the best way possible, and you can have great growth opportunities. So the next option is the soft landing solutions. In J Del Rio, we can help you with all of your soft landing. It was what we talked about in the timelines. We would be able to help you with the full process, take you by the hand, step by step, until you are an operating company. And then we can also help you with searching for a location. As Josue mentioned, when you choose to work under a free trade zone regime, you have to be in a specific location, so we can help you find that perfect place. There's also another very interesting, the formal application of admission. This process takes approximately 3 months to receive the final approval. It is extremely important to have a trusted advisor for this service, since this is a contract between the company and the government that requires a signature of the President of Costa Rica, so the company can operate under the free trade zone regime. In J Del Rio, Josue has many years of experience to complete this process successfully. And then we have the day-to-day services. In the day-to-day would be your bookkeeping, your day-to-day accounting, finance, tax, payroll, auditing, transfer pricing, foreign trade, among other services we have. And the last one would be attention to audits. So another item that Josue mentioned, part of the obligations of being in a free trade zone regime, it requires audits on your fixed assets. So here we can help you prepare. We'll help the company be prepared for all of the audits and the requirements needed from the authorities. So these are some of the options that we can help you with. And we also put here in the presentation a couple of success stories that we can see here. I would like to mention maybe one, which would be the ICU Medical. ICU Medical has been in Costa Rica for 10 years, and they have migrated 14 processes from different parts of the world to be carried out in Costa Rica, creating an integral service beyond just a simple manufacturing operation that they had. And they managed to reduce 40% of their energy with the largest installation of solar panels in just one roof. So we're going to share this presentation. We left the link here so you can go in and view any different or type of industries that of your interest on an official page. And we would like to say that you can probably be the next success story. And if you're interested in doing business in Costa Rica, please let us know and we would be happy to help you with all your growth path. Well, we have reached the end I mean, thank you very much for everyone being with us today. Thank you, Josue, for your wonderful explanations. And so now we are ready to start with the Q&A. We have a lot of questions, so thank you so much for sending them. Let's start off with a couple of ones. And give me a second. Okay, so let's go ahead and start off with the first one, Josue. In the free trade zone regime, can tax incentives be renovated unlimitedly?
Yes, thank you, Alejandra. Yes, it is possible to renew the benefits through the 20 Vs process, unlimited times, and it could be depending of the company's needs. What I mean is that it doesn't matter if you are in year 3, 4, 5, 6, or and you have still additional years of incentives. But if you expect to expand your operations in Costa Rica as a result of this, to hire more people and to invest in fixed asset, here is before that you spend or in fixed assets, or before that you hire additional people, that you request the 20 Vs process, that you receive the approval, and then you can renew and then you can invest in fixed assets, because that would count already as part of your new investment level and your new employment level. So here is the advice is to do when you need to before that you start with some um, increase of the operations in Costa Rica. Otherwise, you will waste the opportunity. But you can do limited times.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Josue. So let's move on to another one. What tax benefits are there for investing companies in the area of digital marketing?
Digital marketing would be considered under the category of services. So basically, all the benefits that I mentioned during the presentation, to be totally exempt of income tax during the first 8 years, to be totally exempt of the payment of dividends, to be exempt of import duties, taxes, to be exempt of VAT, to the extent of remittances, to the extent of municipality. And one more thing, and I'm going to take the opportunity. I already mentioned the tax incentive. There are others that are not necessarily related to taxes. For instance, you can create like some relationship with several institutions in Costa Rica that provide education. So you can say, hey, institution, I need that you develop these skills in these people. They are responsible for that, and once the people are ready, you just hire the people. So there are also benefits like this. But yeah, all the benefit that I mentioned applies for this type of business.
Super, super. So we do have a lot, Josue, but I'm gonna just ask two more, and then we'll be happy to contact everyone individually. So maybe we can go into detail with your questions, okay? So we have another one that says, what is the minimum of employees that must be hired in order to qualify for the free trade zone contract?
There are no minimum. For the category of services, there is the formula that I mentioned, and for the minimum investment in fixed assets of 150,000 in employees, the remunerations must be 320,000 a year, just to get in compliance with the formula. For the other categories, the formula doesn't apply, and this is very important. So you want to develop a manufacturing activity here, you don't have a minimum. Or you want to be administrator, there are free trade zone companies that have just 3, 4, or 5 people, because in those type of businesses, of course, the most important is, for instance, in manufacturing are the machines. They are not the people necessary. For services, the most important is the people. So that's why the formula, or this minimum that I mentioned, apply just for the category of services. For the others, there is no minimum. Of course, you need to to get some commitment that is interested for the government, so they can give you the free trade zone regime, because you are going just to say that you're going to hire one people, probably it's not going to be very attractive for the government. So that's why it's important to create like the business case to make the proposal to the authorities.
Thank you, Josue. Alrighty, the last one. Costa Rica has treaties of double or triple taxation with countries of America, and which ones are there?
In order to avoid the double taxation, it would be with Mexico, Spain, and Germany, and those are the only three that we have.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Josue. Thank you to everyone for being with us today. We have reached the end of this webinar, and Jay Del Rio appreciates your interest and will remain at your service. So please feel free to contact us through the emails that we show. And thank you very much, and hopefully everyone has a great day today. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Josue.